years ago. So there ain't no fake except the one you make. And there ain't no hell except the shit you take every day. So don't tell me life doesn't hurt and that you don't need the people cause you've got your church. You gotta take your head out of the sky because there ain't nothing there but the satellites.
And we are the Non-Prophets. I'm your atheist host, Dennis Loubet, along with atheists Matt Dillahunty, Russell Glasser, and Beth Presswood, on an atheist podcast. Yet some theists claim they don't believe atheists exist. They can't accept that we're coming to you live from the Dillahunty International Studios in Austin, Texas, on Saturday, the 26th of February, 2011, or that the music you heard was Brian Stieksma's I Am the Satellite. They say it takes more faith for them to believe that the atheist community of Austin is actually a non-profit educational organization dedicated to the promotion of positive atheism and the separation of church and state than it does for them to look at the universe and think, a magic man done it. Despite what it says on the ACA voicemail at 512-371-2911 or the ACA website at www.atheist-community.org. Now, to them, the fact that the Non-Prophets broadcasts live every Saturday from 2 to 3 Central Time only means this show is our faith, and our efforts to get listeners to participate in the show by following the directions at www.nonprofitsradio.com and joining the chat room are analogous to their constant evangelizing. So, sit back, relax, listen to the show, and stop existing for a while. You've earned it.
We've missed you, Dennis.
Yay. No more Dennis skipping shows.
Yeah, well.
So,
I slept late. What can I say?
Yeah, slept really late. Okay, so there's a bucket load of stuff going on and a bunch of news, and we'll probably end up making this show a little longer because there won't be a show for 3 weeks. Beth and I have another commitment next week. And the following weekend is the wedding of a friend of ours in Houston. So, hi, Natasha. We'll be there.
And by 3 weeks, do you really mean 6 months by any chance?
No. By 3 weeks,
okay.
I mean I am unaware currently of any obligations on March 19th that would prevent us from doing a show. That doesn't mean that catastrophe won't strike.
That's right.
So there's a lot of other stuff going on. Some of it relates directly to me, and some of it affects everybody. I've got a bunch of different speaking engagements that are coming up over the next few months. The biggest of which is, of course, the American Atheist National Convention, which I wanted to remind everyone of. It is April 21st through 24th in Des Moines, Iowa. The Embassy Suites Hotel on the river is where it's going to be. That hotel has now sold out. Evidently, there was somebody else booked some event there at about the same time. So it'll be interesting to see who that is and why. But they have reserved special rates at the Marriott, which is about 4 blocks away, and there's going to be some limited transportation back and forth. And the convention has a special rate for students as well. And just to let you know, Hector Avalos will be there, Jamila Bay, Greta Christina, Troy Conrad, Pastor Deacon Fred. I'll be there, Tom Flynn, David Goslin, Christopher Hitchens, Kathleen Johnson, Lawrence Krauss, P.Z. Myers, Jeff Charlotte, Eddie Tavish, Jay Anderson Thompson, Donald Wright, and Indra Zuno. And I don't know who else is going to be there. There's
a veritable who's who.
The schedule hasn't been put out yet. I actually talked to Dave yesterday because, by the way, if you're concerned that you won't be in good company now that the Embassy Suites is sold out, don't worry about it because I'll have to be staying at the Marriott as well because I still haven't booked my travel and stuff. There's just too much going on with weddings and houses and other things. So that's going on April 21st through 24th. If you can get up there, please do. And I think I'm actually speaking Sunday afternoon, which is better than Sunday morning. Yeah, but it's also like as people are starting to end their weekend and stuff. So go ahead, take Monday off too, stay for the whole damn thing,
Right.
We'll have a good time. And they're trying to raise money for another billboard to put all over the Des Moines area as well. What else? There's a bunch of events and stuff coming up. I'm not going to go through all the different speaking engagements right now, but I'm planning on going to Texas A&M some week in March. And there's another group that's wants me to come out in May. So who knows? We have news. Lots of news. Anybody remember, on the show recently when I said that the Catholic Church is a criminal organization and needs to be prosecuted?
Which time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's coincidental because I mentioned it last week or the week before. So the irishtimes.com, and that's something we're going to try to remember to start doing, is telling people where we get these individual news items from.
Right.
Okay.
Report that charges have been initiated against the Pope for crimes against humanity.
Yes.
2 German lawyers have initiated charges against Pope Benedict XVI at the International Criminal Court alleging crimes against humanity. Their charges concern 3 worldwide crimes which until now have not been denounced, as the traditional reverence toward ecclesiastical authority has clouded the sense of right and wrong. They claim the Pope is responsible for the preservation and leadership of a worldwide totalitarian regime of coercion which subjugates its members with terrifying and health-endangering threats.
Mm-hmm.
They allege he is responsible for the adherence to a fatal forbiddance of the use of condoms, even when the danger of HIV/AIDS infection exists, although he has since backtracked on that.
Oh.
And for the establishment and maintenance of a worldwide system of cover-up of the sexual crimes committed by Catholic priests and their preferential treatment, which aids and abets ever new crimes.
Mm-hmm.
PZ was calling for the Pope to be perp-walked, and I would love that. Can you imagine, how do you get a newspaper that covers that big fucking hat he's got? As he's pulling his jacket up over his face.
I don't know
That's
if
right.
he'd wear the hat. I'm pretty sure that the perp walk would be considered ex cathedra, so to speak.
So, yeah. Whether or not anything actually happens
Cathedra.
with this, I have no idea.
Yeah, it's so it's a baby step. Let's put it that way. I doubt anything will come of it, but it's a baby step. It gets the things a little higher profile.
And there's been a lot of little baby steps. There's good stuff going on in Ireland, and but it's a mixed bag.
Yeah.
And I just hope that people keep pushing this. Mm-hmm. Ideally, honestly, I do think the Pope in particular, and a number of the clergy, the higher-ups in the Vatican, deserve prison time. I legitimately feel that. However, I realize that that's probably never going to happen, and I would be satisfied with seeing them humiliated and their organization destroyed because of the lives that they have destroyed in the name of their superstitious bullshit.
What's the slogan now? Sell the Vatican, feed the world?
Yeah. Who's got the next one?
Maybe I'm a little cynical, but I've always felt that when an organization is sufficiently large, the members of the organization effectively don't care how badly their leaders are shamed. They basically, the Pope could be caught sacrificing, thousands of virgin girls on the altar of the Vatican, and they'd come up with rationalizations for it.
Well, no, I think in cases like that, they would, come down against him. The thing is, when they approve of his actions, he is anointed by God and the mouthpiece of God and the leader of the church and a fine representative. And the minute any of them do something wrong, well, clearly they're not one of us. That's
Right.
the way they do things.
Right. I mean,
And-
they're skilled in doublethink, and it would never discredit the organization. I mean, not that it couldn't be gradually undermined over time, but I don't think you'd ever see something as big as the Catholic Church fall in some big dramatic scandal.
Yeah, but we on the outside, we can justifiably point and say, you're all responsible.
You know, I'm not so sure. I mean, I don't necessarily disagree with you because I agree that it's probably impractical and very unlikely. But we do know that empires fall and that religions fade. And I do think that there's a possibility of a big enough scandal that outrages enough people with a major court trial that bankrupts those fucks.
It'd be nice.
I don't know that it's going to happen anytime soon. I think the general kind of tenor of the world is not in a position where that could happen. So I don't think they're going to fall from their highest point, but they may fall after a slow decline.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if it was a sudden fall, that's all.
Yeah.
Danger, the Pope is coming.
Let's see.
I grabbed our hot intern here, who's actually sitting next to me, grabbed a bunch of news stories. We kind of trashed most of us in the room were Obama supporters, and we have also.
I mean, I'm not an Obama acolyte, but I'm still
a
supporter.
It's not like I'm walking lockstep behind the Hope campaign.
He's miles better than the alternative.
But we also criticized him for stupid things that he did,
That's true.
and promises broken.
As a matter of fact, when he chose to not only not obey the court in terms of their proclamation that "Don't Ask, Don't Tell" should be repealed, but actually wanted his Justice Department to appeal it, I thought that was a massively stupid idea and it would never work out well, and it did. I'm still not sure that it was the best course of action. He might have gotten lucky, but it worked out, and
now he has announced that he won't go to court over the Defense of Marriage Act.
sweet.
From the nationaljournal.com, President Obama now believes that the Defense of Marriage Act is unconstitutional and will no longer defend the 15-year-old law in federal court, the Justice Department announced Wednesday. Symbolically and substantively, his decision represents a major advance for gay rights and presages a significant shift in how the government will handle questions about equality for gays. It could also reignite a largely burnt-over debate in the culture wars, distracting both political parties. So, yeah, what the long and short of this, okay, that needs to go away. There is a cat disrupting the program. That can't happen. So, professional radio, or podcasting guys. So the Defense of Marriage Act was challenged. It lost. Mm-hmm. The original report was that the White House would appeal, and now they have announced that they are not going to do this.
What exactly was the Defense of Marriage Act for our listeners?
The Defense of Marriage Act was signed by President Clinton and allows states not to recognize same-sex marriages performed in other states, and provides a federal definition for marriage that excludes same-sex couples.
So it was actually a restriction of Marriage Act.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you, if there's one guy who knows how to defend a marriage, it's Bill Clinton. Huh? Huh?
Hey, though, he's still married
That's true.
to the same woman. Maybe
Say
he
what you
does
will
know how
about
to defend
Hillary,
a marriage.
She is the most understanding wife.
Yeah.
I'd be surprised if she isn't getting some on the side, too. I think they have an agreement. Maybe you missed, though, the follow-up story about the Defense of Marriage Act.
Oh,
Since
no.
we're making a policy of noting our sources, this comes from the prestigious online journal, TheOnion.com,
Oh.
in which marauding gay hordes drag thousands of helpless citizens from marriage after Obama drops Defense of Marriage Act.
Dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria.
Reports continue to pour in from around the nation today of helpless Americans being forcibly taken from their marital unions after President Obama dropped the Defense of Marriage Act earlier this week, leaving the institution completely vulnerable to roving bands of homosexuals.
You know what I'd love to
That's
see?
exactly what they think.
I'd just love to see, like, some of the most outrageous, like, queen gays out on the streets just shouting, "We're coming for your husbands, ladies! Your defense of your marriage over." I love scaring the shit out of people who are scared of things that they have no reason to be scared of. It's just dumb. So one of the other things that we'll go ahead and mention is that the Obama administration has rejected the Bush medical regulations. This is from Secular News Daily. Last week, the Obama administration did something that didn't capture much media attention, but should have. It officially overturned a bad policy from the Bush years and issued a series of final regulations dealing with health care and the right of conscience. In December of 2008, the lame duck Bush administration issued a sweeping series of regulations giving health care workers a right to refuse to take part in any procedure that they say violates their religious beliefs. The astonishing, broad, and far-sweeping reach of the regulations extended beyond reproductive health care, such as sterilization and abortion, to cover areas such as end-of-life directives, care of patients with HIV, and even use of psychiatric medicines. I think the reason for this was to allow people to refuse to give contraception and abortions, and I think it was primarily focused on reproductive rights.
Right.
But they introduced this, which I still would have objected to, but they introduced it as sweeping legislation that included all kinds of things. You know, it kind of cut down there's this oppressive kind of mentality that stems particularly from the religious right, that their particular views about morality and things that they label as moral and immoral are essentially amoral. There's no moral evaluation of whether or not somebody's gay. I mean, it's not moral or immoral to be gay. It is any more than it is straight. You are
right. You simply are.
So they seem to think that they have a duty to impose their views onto everybody, and they've done this to the point that it is starting to affect everybody's rights. You know, whereas they had been poking and prodding at homosexuals for ages, now they're poking and prodding at other people too. And for example, I have a living will, or had a living will. I don't know where it is, so maybe nobody could find it and enact it. But there are a number of situations under which I would sign a DNR. I would sign something saying, you know, do not take ridiculous measures to try to keep me alive.
Right.
If I'm in a vegetative state, such as, what's the premier example? Terry Schiavo.
Premier example.
Where my brain is, you know, not really a brain anymore. Don't do that. I mean, first of all, you're not doing it to me because I'm dead at that point.
Right.
What you're doing is maintaining a meat sack at a great expense to my loved ones and prolonging their ability to move on with their life. I become this shackle that they lug around for however long you keep those machines running. And I wouldn't want that. And I don't see why anybody would. But I fully allow somebody who wants to punish their family in that way to go for it.
Right.
But legislation like this goes so far as to say that they wouldn't participate in unplugging someone if it violates their beliefs.
Don't worry, I'll pull the plug on you, honey.
Okay, thank you. That's why I love her.
There you
New
go.
York Minute.
She's been hinting. She looked at me the other day, just kind of out of the blue, and she's like, "I'm going to be so sad when you're dead." And I was like, "Are you planning something? We haven't even gone through the wedding yet." And you're like, "I'm so sad when you're dead." And now I'll pull the plug.
No problem.
Well, you know, how else is she going to get her hands on those, piles of atheist fortune that you have stashed away.
Yeah, as I try to figure out how I'm going to pay to get myself to the American Atheist Convention.
Hypothetically speaking, if you were to step in front of a bus...
So, yeah. And a word to all the fans of the Atheist Experience and the nonprofits. If I mysteriously die in the next 2 years, Beth did it.
I have the perfect alibi now.
Yeah. There's no way I'd kill him after coming out and saying I was going to kill him. Okay, I wasn't going to mention this at all because there's a lot of stuff going on. And, I'm not here to toot my own horn. And Martin's giving me no end to grief about this, particularly since evidently I now have a page at Urban Dictionary. And the only thing that annoys me, because I thought it was really funny, the only thing that annoys me about it is that Urban Dictionary sells merchandise for every entry. So there's like Matt Dillahunty hats and T-shirts and other stuff. And I'm like, why am I not getting a cut of this?
So what does it mean when you Dillahunty something?
I don't know. But according to Urban Dictionary, Chuck Norris wears Matt Dillahunty pajamas. So
okay, cool.
Of course, now that this is public, the page should be flooded with Conservapedia members trying to edit it.
Yeah, but the thing that I wasn't going to announce, although this got tons of posts on Facebook and comments and the blog and everything else. A clip from a show an Atheist Experience TV show that I did last week, 2 weeks ago.
Oh, yeah. Ago?
It was 2 weeks ago, where I had a really good conversation with Mark from Stone Church Austin. Got posted, and PZ posted it. Full disclosure, that was at my request. And then it got mirrored on RichardDawkins.net.
Oh, cool.
And Dawkins himself commented on it, said some nice things, and wanted to know how to contact us. For those who immediately jumped all over it and started telling them everything about us and the show and how to contact us, he has contacted us, and that's all I have to say on the matter, other than I'm very happy that he liked what he saw and that other people were encouraged by the possibilities. I won't be saying... it's not like I can say Richard's going to be on the show next week or anything like that. It's something that may or may not happen. It's going to depend on schedules, but the kind of joint admiration society thing is greatly appreciated.
Well, I expect a DVD of the Five Horsemen sometime next.
Yeah, right.
You did a good job on that, although I do want to express disappointment that you got him for like most of the last part of the show, whereas he hung up on me and Martin after 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I wanted that guy.
Yeah.
But oh well.
So evidently their church is their church is a little concerned about our show and the effect that it may be having on the younger members of their church. And I think they should be concerned about the effect that it's going to have on the people who actually call in. Because when Mark ended that call, it was this really resigned sigh and click.
Yeah.
Not that I think Mark's going to be an atheist, tomorrow or anything, or ever.
No,
but
I think more... I don't know if he actually hung up on us on purpose. He said he didn't. But... my impression of him after seeing two of his performances is that he gets frustrated and annoyed easily.
Yeah.
But, I mean, supposedly more members of his church were watching each time, and I would love to have more of them call in and say what they thought.
Yeah, and I was serious when I said that, I'd be happy to visit their church and sit down with their pastor or talk to them and have a discussion whether or not they want to do that. I mean, I don't see why they would. I mean, if they're actually terrified of us, but it's certainly something. It's the type of thing that I actually enjoy doing. Being kind of under the gun like that. Russell, did you have a news item?
Sure. Actually, I'd like to go to the man who threatened South Park creators getting 25 years in prison.
Wow.
Wow, really?
A 21-year-old man who admitted posting online threats against the creators of the animated TV series South Park was sentenced Thursday to 25 years in prison. Zachary Adam Chesser encouraged violent jihadists to attack South Park writers for an episode that depicted the Prophet Muhammad in a bear suit, court documents said. He posted online messages that included the writers' home addresses and urged online readers to pay them a visit, the documents said. His actions caused people throughout the country to fear speaking out, even in jest, to avoid being labeled as enemies who deserve to be killed, U.S. Attorney Neil McBride said. The fact that a young man from Northern Virginia could support such violence and terror is a sobering reminder of the serious threat that homegrown jihadists pose to the country.
Yeah, that's the essence of terrorism.
It is. Chesser pleaded guilty in October to providing material support to terrorists, communicating threats, and soliciting others to threaten violence. The 3 charges carried a maximum sentence of 30 years in prison. I'm betting that at least some people, maybe even some people in this room, will probably kind of quibble about whether this is okay under the First Amendment, and I think it probably is. No.
Incitement?
Okay, I actually had this discussion with somebody, I believe from Canada this week, who was talking about what sort of limits would I personally be willing to put on free speech. And would I support hate crime legislation if a reasonable definition of hate speech or hate speech legislation, if a reasonable definition of hate speech could be achieved? And I said I'm unaware of any way to come up with a reasonable definition of hate speech. And we already have laws that deal with speech that incites people to action that is violent and harmful and things. So those things are already limited.
Which is that.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like there's a difference, for example, as much as I hate having to continually support them and use them as an example, they are the prime example. There's a difference between the Westboro Baptist Church speaking their personal views.
And as far as I know, they don't deliberately incite people to violence.
No, this is they're God's going to get you. They never tell anybody, "Hey, go kill people." There's a difference between them doing that and somebody saying, "These assholes are insulting you. Here's their home address. Go and pay them a visit." And that difference is already recognized under the laws we can see from this particular ruling. Yeah. So I'm kind of against, not just kind of, I'm vehemently against continuing to add new laws to things that are already covered. If we find a gap in the coverage, let's plug the gap for all. Yeah,
the laws versus incitement are perfectly acceptable here. I mean, they're perfectly applicable in pretty much any instance.
So yeah, I don't think. I think this, and the fact that they pretty much got the max penalty. Well, I guess it's the max. I don't know. Kind of shows that we understand by and large. There are a lot of things in law that aren't really well defined. Obscenity isn't well defined, and some of the limits on free speech and action aren't well defined. And there is a standard of reasonableness that they often use, and there's also a standard of harm or imminent harm or danger and imminent danger, and those are also ambiguous. So there's some judicial discretion, but by and large, I think for the most part we tend to get it right.
Yeah,
and when we don't, there are ways to correct it. And when we find gaps in the laws, there are ways to plug them. But I don't think the way to plug a gap is to build a whole new wall.
Right.
And that's what some of the hate speech
that's impossible to navigate.
That's what some of the hate speech laws that I've seen tend to do.
Wait, so you are saying that this case is justified, though? Or
my understanding of the facts of this case, I think
violence.
Yes, I think so.
And, for the record, I really wish that those would be equally applied to the Operation Rescue types who are circulating those posters, wanted posters of doctors. And, at this point, there is obvious probable cause after dozens of shootings that these things are not just rhetorical devices.
It's like the incitement. You can get them for incitement. except if they phrase what they're saying really cleverly.
Yeah.
You know, no. It's clear you want these people dead, and you're saying somebody do it.
It's like
you're inciting. Yeah.
It's like the kids in the back seat of the car, who get as close as they can to touching the other person without doing it.
Right.
I'm not touching you. I'm not touching you.
The appropriate policy is to swiftly and immediately punish even the pretending to touch them.
Yes.
Pull the car
until
over.
they get the message.
So
I'm not sure how that applies to violent rhetoric.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't know. There's more on
It's
this,
the same thing.
but Beth's got a story now, too.
All right.
Okay. In Giles County, Virginia, this school decided it was going to put up the 10 Commandments.
Because no one knows those things.
Yeah, you're not taught about those at church or anything.
No,
You
no,
have to be
no.
taught
Also,
about
I
at
understand
school.
that those are not religious at all. That's what the
Oh,
courts
no,
have said.
no.
That's right. That's right.
Only having one God and stuff, not religious, no. But the FFRF, Freedom from Religion Foundation, which I think is the largest atheist group, actually, came down hard on them. They threatened to sue, and they actually have plaintiffs with children in the schools, so
Good.
people that have standing came forward. And Giles County did remove the 10 Commandments.
Huzzah.
Now, FFRF is not saying that they're going to drop the suit yet, because most likely, FFRF would go away for a couple months, 10 Commandments would go right back up. That's just the way it is down there.
Right.
But as of right now, they're still going to proceed, and we'll just watch this case. I'm hoping that Giles County knows not to try,
Right.
or they're going to get the smackdown.
It was weird. I was reading a blog, and in the comments, somebody actually went through and looked at all the landmark decisions of prayer in school, and came up with the result that mostly it's theists bringing the complaints.
Oh, yeah.
It's not atheists that have removed prayer from school. It's theists.
Yes, a minority theists, because, Jews and I think Jehovah's Witnesses got
Right.
kids to not have to say the pledge. It's theist against theists.
Yeah.
Just because there's prayer in schools doesn't mean it's going to be your type of prayer in schools.
Yeah. Now, mind you, atheists are grossly overrepresented compared to their actual numbers in the public at large, but still, it was theists mostly.
Yeah, and that's why we shouldn't have prayer in schools. It's
Yeah.
not good for anybody. It's not good for even theists. Mm-hmm. So that was my story.
And you're sticking to it. I don't even know. Man, I haven't looked at this enough to comment. Russell, have you got another one?
I really have only what Beth gave.
Oh.
Uh-oh.
So, I did pull up some
Are we
relevant
running on
cases
vapors?
of tests in the among the First Amendment historical precedent, but I don't know if anyone's really interested in that. It's just on the Wikipedia page on the First Amendment to the United States Constitution. Where, for instance, Gitlow versus New York, which was, I don't know, sometime early 20th century, Benjamin Gitlow was convicted of criminal anarchy after he was found advocating the necessity and propriety of overthrowing and overturning organized government by force, violence, and unlawful means in the Left-Wing Manifesto. So there's something to throw at conservatives who think it's okay, as well as publishing and circulating a radical newspaper called The Revolutionary Age, advocating similar ideas. The court said, let's see, in arguing before the Supreme Court, Gitlow contended, while acknowledging that liberty of expression is not absolute, he maintained that it may be restrained only in instances where its exercise bears a causal relation with some substantive evil, consummated, attempted, or likely. John Edward Sanford declared that utterances inciting to the overthrow of organized government by unlawful means present a sufficient danger of substantive evil to bring their punishment within the range of legislative discretion. That is not about private citizens, but it's still interesting given some of the Tea Party stuff. Yeah. But anyway, that's a
well,
tangent.
it focused on the by legal means is important.
Right.
Yeah. So quickly, there's a correction from last week's show that should have been at the top of the show, and I intended to do it at the top of the show, but I forgot. The supposed attack on Westboro Baptist Church by Anonymous is evidently not by Anonymous, and people or individuals or representatives identifying themselves as Anonymous. Does that even make sense to identify yourself as Anonymous? Think that this was Westboro Baptist Church kind of doing it to themselves for publicity. So it's like masturbatory hacktivism.
They're attention whores. Yes.
Here's the thing I don't quite understand about Anonymous. If they are, as they say, legion, and they're not an organized group, and they're just a bunch of disassociated individuals occasionally choosing to act in concert, then who's the guy who put out the press release saying Anonymous has nothing to do with this?
Yes.
I mean, by what authority?
This is what drives me crazy. As soon as we talked about this, we got emails from people saying, "Oh, you guys just don't understand Anonymous. It's not, an organization. It's a bunch of individual people, and pretty much anybody can do whatever they want." I don't understand how this can work. And here's the thing: on the website, there was an announcement purportedly from Anonymous, whatever the fuck that means, that they were going after Westboro Baptist Church. And then there's a follow-up announcement, purportedly from Anonymous, that no, we're not. Now, with
a third one.
With no authority, no individual spokesperson, no rubber stamp authorized body, none of that stuff, and them claiming that there is no such thing, I'm in a position where I've seen two press announcements, both anonymous, and at this point, I just don't give a damn.
Yeah, so these press announcements just appear out of the blue? What the heck?
I mean, I appreciate the fact that there are individuals who are willing to take action specifically in opposition to gross injustices. I don't always agree with what they do, why they do it, or how they do it in every situation. But I appreciate the fact that there are individuals out there. The problem with this is, if the organization, and can you call it an organization?
Good question.
If this collection of anonymous individuals who seem to mostly identify themselves as anonymous and almost agree on some things when they go to do stuff, says something, how do I know it's them?
Right.
And is there a them? There's no there. It's, this isn't just the people who throw on the Guy Fawkes masks and go stand out in front of Scientology's buildings. It's just, I don't even want to talk about it anymore. Anonymous.
There's nothing. There's not enough to even grab onto to talk about.
Maybe some of you got anonymous guys could
swear then that somebody else put out a third press release that I saw later that said, all right, we weren't going to go after you, but now you fucked with us too much because Westboro Baptist Church put out some kind of mocking Bring It On message. And they said, okay, now you've pissed us off. And in fact, God Hates Fags, I checked for myself, was down.
No. There was, okay. Yes.
Yes.
And no.
Yeah, no.
So I watched...
You sound like Anonymous, man.
I know. Okay, so I watched a video. Shirley Phelps Roper is being interviewed, and so is a representative of Anonymous. Now, how do you become a representative, and how do you check that this is representative?
I don't know.
It's nuts. So they're on there talking, and while this is going on, the God Hates Fag... all of the Westboro Baptist Church websites were down. And the guy from Anonymous, if that makes any sense, was saying, no, we didn't do this. And
How does he know?
Shirley was being just annoying. Well, evidently they know who did. Another hacktivist by the name of Jester did it. So, I don't know. So Shirley's being her usual annoying self. And by the way, I didn't get a hold of Nate. We could have had Nate comment on this. He'll be calling in. I guess we'll shoot for the 19th. So Nate, if you're listening, plan on calling in on the 19th, and maybe you can enlighten us. So
You should probably follow that up with an email of some sort.
he's got my email. So Shirley's being her usual annoying self, and the guy, purportedly from Anonymous, decides at that moment that he'll strut his stuff and throws up a file at downloads.westborobaptistchurch.com right there live while the show's going on. And I mean, it took him 4 or 5 seconds. I mean, it was just, from the time he said he was doing it until it was done. So it was kind of mildly amusing. But yeah, this may have been Westboro Baptist Church kind of doing things to themselves. It may have been somebody from Anonymous. It may have been somebody not from Anonymous who thinks they're from Anonymous. Maybe I'm an Anonymous and nobody ever told me. But I have corrected the misinformation to the best of my ability. And if there are people out there who are part of Anonymous and you'd like to help clarify this, I would say go ahead and hack ironchariots.org, update the PHP bulletin board software for me and the wiki software for me without losing anything, and you can put a little note, you have your own page at Iron Chariots about Anonymous explaining it to everybody else. It'll save me some work, and I might like you guys.
Well, I think actually this comment in the chat room is pretty relevant. It says it's kind of like forming a group called White People. And then saying, white people are against this. And, I mean, I'm sure that some white people are against it and some are not, but there's no acknowledged leader of white people.
Well, I'm a representative of white people. And
I am too, apparently.
Yes, but I'm whiter than you, so...
All right, no argument.
Yeah, well...
But I'm not more anonymous. Oh, wow. We found the fatal flaw in our plan. All right. So the other thing that happened that we talked about on last week's show was the horrible South Dakota bill.
Oh, yeah.
That was basically going to legalize, open season on abortion doctors. That bill got shelved.
Good.
So, woo, yay, cheers and applause, and it's all over with. Except that it's not, because the fucktards in Nebraska have decided that they want to one-up South Dakota. Oh. And so they've resurrected this justifiable homicide abortion bill in Nebraska. The legislation, LB 232, was introduced by State Senator Mark Christensen. There's a name.
Yeah.
A devout Christian and diehard abortion foe who is opposed to the procedure even in the case of rape. Unlike its South Dakota counterpart, which would have allowed only a pregnant woman, her husband, her parents, or her children to commit justifiable homicide in defense of her fetus, the Nebraska bill would apply it to any third party.
Yep.
In short, this bill authorizes and protects vigilantes, and that's something unprecedented in our society. Melissa Grant of Planned Parenthood of the Heartland told the Nebraska Legislative Judiciary Committee on Wednesday.
Because they all want to be vigilantes.
The fact that stuff like this is even being proposed is preposterous in the time in which we're living, or the time in which we should be living. The fact that it actually gets written out as legislation and proposed officially is an abomination of everything that we're supposed to be about.
We live in really bizarre times right now.
We do.
I mean, there are seriously batshit crazies making it to really high levels of government all the time, and then we have the media treating people like us as shrill because we call them batshit crazy.
Yeah.
And they're talking about fucking killing people.
Yeah.
Who haven't done anything illegal. I mean, Supreme Court... Hello, said that this is okay. So, how can this not be unconstitutional?
Yeah, it just blows my mind. Well, this is one of those areas where, and I hate to toss this out because it'll cause more hate mail, but I'm generally a fan of states' rights. That there can be differences between the states, but we're also the United States. And the people who are hardcore, let every state decide their own shit, you've lost your minds. Because this is the type of thing that will happen. That is being attempted to occur right now in Nebraska. They tried to do it in South Dakota. They're going to try to do it everywhere. What if it passes? What's the solution to that? Do we just, every thinking person abandons that state? Do we become the 49 United States? Do we add Puerto Rico in finally and cut out Nebraska and just, stop providing them, do we reroute the highways around them so that we don't have to pay tolls to people who want to kill doctors? And by the way, some of these bills were written, it wasn't just if you see an otherwise legal medical procedure being done to remove a fetus type thing. It was about if in defense of the fetus from particular actions, which means, I think, as broadly as this seems to be written, if your niece is a crack addict and is poisoning her kid with crack, you can take actions up to and including killing somebody, maybe even the crack dealer, in order to protect that fetus. When I mean, I'm in favor of let's do everything we can to protect unborn from crack and addictive from being given a deformed, crippled, poisoned, unhealthy start by their irresponsible idiot mothers. I'm in. Let's do that within reason. Right. But now we're talking about executing doctors.
Yeah, they did not put this past, a cadre of really crack game designers.
Yeah,
and it doesn't take a cadre of really crack game designers to figure out that this law just sucks.
Yeah, it may be the case that in much the same way that researchers investigating the paranormal and stuff need to rely on magicians, experts at faking it, that lawmakers need to start having meetings with game designers who produce.
We know this won't work.
Yeah.
We've tried this.
This is a dumb idea.
This is completely contrary.
Can't add PvP to a PvE server.
Yes.
It's been tried and failed.
Will get that.
All right. So in other legal news, on the upside.
Yes, upside would be good.
Oregon lawmakers appear ready to end legal protections for faith-healing parents. This is from Oregon Live.
Oh, good.
Oregon lawmakers will take the first step today toward ending legal protections for parents who rely solely on faith to treat their dying children. The bill targets the followers of Christ and Oregon City Church with a long history of children dying from treatable medical conditions. A previous crackdown... Huh?
Yay for going after them.
A previous crackdown restricted but did not eliminate religious immunity from state criminal status. Representative Carolyn Tomei, a Democrat from Milwaukee... Wait a minute. Is it Milwaukee, Oregon? Or is she their state rep? Anyway, said deaths of 3 followers' children in recent years, all without medical intervention, prompted her to introduce the bill. Such gross and unnecessary neglect cannot be allowed, even if the parents are well-meaning. Mm-hmm. And this goes back to something we've said over and over and over again. And it's something that I brought up in that call with Mark, that none of us here, as much as we hate religion and hate Christianity, hate Christians. It's not like, oh, you Christian people, you're evil.
Collectively.
Yeah. There are individuals.
Individual Christians that I don't like. Yes.
Don't get me wrong. There are individual Christians who I cannot stand because I think they are dishonest and knowingly doing harm and just completely callous and uncaring about it. Most, though, and this applies to people of other religions as well, are generally well-meaning and duped. And in the case of parents who rely on prayer for their sick and dying children, as opposed and refusing medical condition, you can pray all you want in addition to responsible medical treatment. But for those who do it instead, there's this sticky little issue of parents' rights and how much we allow.
Yeah.
And I think it's absurd for anybody to say that we give parents carte blanche when the lives of their children are at stake, when what they are doing is demonstrably worse and more likely to lead to death and permanent harm than actually seeking
the laws of the land are there to protect all citizens.
Yeah.
Not ones just being held incommunicado by their parents,
Just because you knew how to have unprotected sex does not give you free rein to destroy somebody else's life.
Right.
They're not your property. You are their custodians. You're the one who's supposed to be teaching them about reality, about life. You're the one that's supposed to be preparing them for reality. And if your worldview is so skewed by your religious indoctrination, by your silly superstitions, by your unsupported beliefs that prayer is greater than surgery, you are doing real harm.
Mm-hmm.
This is actually the first point that I usually go to when people who don't understand why we have shows like The Atheist Experience ask why I do this thing. Is it just offensive to people?
Religion doesn't do any harm.
Right, and I mean, this is exactly the first thing I say, because, if you're talking to somebody who is hostile against you, the first thing you need to do is try to find common ground with them, and most moderate Christians can understand the point that you don't want people to die because of misguided religious beliefs trumping science.
Yep.
And, I mean, that's why it's important to be not only an atheist, but an outspoken atheist. I mean, not a necessity,
that's
but
right.
That's why it's a good thing.
Think of the children.
Yeah, think of the children. They get to use that bullshit.
We ought to call ourselves the family something. We got to have family in the name.
Yeah,
Nonprofit's Family Hour.
Why do you hate your children?
That's right.
So in the UK, we have a new example of bigotry being perpetrated by Muslims.
Yeah.
Muslims, by the way, being absolutely terrified of gays, by and large. An interesting side note, when I did the debate with Father Jacobsy at UMBC, there was a young Muslim man who came up to ask a question, and it was asked, and I thought I answered it. And several months later, he emailed me. He had asked, about, how can you refuse something like Islam when it is a perfect moral system for everybody?
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm not aware of any moral system that's perfect for everybody, and certainly not Islam. And so after months of waiting around, he emailed me to say that he wanted to have an email discussion and make his case for it. And I said, I'm more than happy to do that, but what are your views on homosexuality? Because if you're going to claim that you have a moral system that's perfect for everybody, and you are adamantly opposed to homosexuality, how can you possibly claim that your moral system is good for gays?
Right.
Or women.
Or women. But I went with the easy, obvious one, and never got a response. And
shut him up.
From BBC Online, residents tackle East End gay-free zone stickers. It's no bigger than a postcard, but appears to spread a message of hatred and division in an area of East London that many residents pride for its diversity. Reprinted and glued to dozens of lampposts and railings in the area, the flyer, which has a rainbow with the circle with a line through it saying gay-free zone, and a couple of references to the Quran, states, "Arise and warn, gay-free zone. Verify Allah is severe in punishment." It's been discovered near Shoreditch's gay pubs and around a school in Whitechapel, both in Tower Hamlets, East London. But a group of East End residents say they have had enough. And rather than retaliating with anger, they are responding with the message of love. Actor Matthew Blake, 27, described the gay-free zone messages on the stickers as a bullying tactic. Quote, a few individuals think they have the right to tell everyone how they should and shouldn't feel and where they are and aren't allowed to go. It affects everyone and creates unease in the area, and that's not what East London's about. The area is multicultural, multisexuality place where you can be who you are and believe in what you want. It's a shame this has sullied that. So good for him.
It's like you need little additions to those little things they post up there, you know. Saying, so Islam is not the religion of peace.
Yeah.
Check. Got it.
Islam is a religion of peace, and if you say otherwise, we will blow you up.
We will kill you.
Yeah, they'd be bitching about some Islam free zone stickers.
Yeah, they would.
That's for sure. Oh, yeah, and we're speaking against Islam. Not just talking about Christianity today.
Take a note. And
now, I'm wondering, is homophobia really the word to use? I mean, it's
not the only word.
Yeah, I mean,
but I'd say that
what
they
do
are
you call
definitely
people
fearful.
Who aren't afraid of homosexuals, they just hate homosexuals.
I think they're both. I think they're afraid and hate.
Yeah, I mean, I think they want to kill them because they represent a threat to them of some sort, an imaginary threat.
But I don't know.
They just think they're icky, then.
I mean, we went to war in Iraq to kill a bunch of dudes that we were afraid of. I mean, fair enough. I just came up with something on Reddit.com. There's a sports writer who really gets it about a story that we covered last week, dealing with the kid who refused to fight a girl wrestler on religious grounds.
Yeah, and this story and a few others really kind of rewrote and reaffirmed my position. So I'm in agreement with what you're about to read completely.
You think?
Ooh.
Okay. So, Rick Riley here says, let's see, it's his religion, and he's strong in his faith, said Megan Black, the only other girl who made state. These were the first two in the state's history. Black lost both her matches. And you have to respect him for that. Then Rick Riley writes, why? Does any wrong-headed decision become right when it's defended with religious conviction? In this age, don't we know better? If my God told me to poke the elderly with sharp sticks, would that make it morally acceptable to others? This guy is actually writing the Euthyphro dilemma, in effect, on ESPN.com.
Cool.
And where does the Bible say that it's not to wrestle against girls or compete against them? What religion forbids the 2-point reversal? Don't care so much about that part, actually. But yeah, you're saying you agree with that and you didn't before? Matt?
Well, I was completely uncertain on this because I could see... I mean, I was opposed in general to what he did, but I could at least understand his position. And I was with you on his actions carry with it its own punishment.
Right.
The forfeiture of the match. He makes the author on ESPN makes additional points that elbows in the ribs and all these other things are what she wants. She wants to compete. This is who she is. She has earned this. Right. And not even that she had to earn it. She should have been permitted to participate simply out of her own desire, just as anybody else would. But she went beyond that and proved that she is good at this, wants it, and was eager for competition. And she was denied that because of this individual's religious beliefs.
Right, but anybody can forfeit at any time for any stupid reason they choose to.
Sure, and if your reason
was indeed stupid, and there's no need to respect him, which is the point that Rick Riley is making.
And if your reason is this stupid, probably best to keep it to yourself so you don't get pilloried.
Yeah. Oh, I'm all for pillorying him.
He should have just said, I'm going to go ahead and forfeit this match. Now the thing is, they may have asked for a reason specifically to prevent collusion. That's a consideration that they really need to take. So they'd want a reason, but it's hard to. I mean, for all we know, he completely lied. This isn't his religion, and he was colluding to try and get her further. Maybe they're hooking up on the sly. But my big thing is, now that I've read a number of discussions about this, he was another well-meaning but misguided individual on behalf of his religion who denied somebody else an opportunity to demonstrate
that she could kick
his ass. Now, there were people who wrote in who said, I think you guys are missing a non-religious, rational, secular point of view from this, and that is that, if he lost this, he would never be able to live it down for the rest of his life. He would have been beaten by a girl. And I think that's the dumbest thing I've heard about this whole situation.
Possibly even dumber than the religious angle.
Because, first of all, what happens in high school doesn't haunt you forever. So I'm thinking it's probably high schoolers who wrote this. There are things that happened to me in high school that I thought would probably haunt me forever that I don't even remember, and neither does anybody I hung out with. And the people who would remember, I don't hang out with, so it doesn't matter. But the other aspect of this is he wouldn't be the only guy she's beaten. There's only a couple women on here. She had a great record. And clearly she beat other... There are plenty of guys who are getting their ass kicked by girls. And I think it's a great thing. It's,
Yes.
One of the things that I enjoyed when I was a teenager was staying up on Saturday night late to watch Doctor Who on PBS. Now, this came to mind because I emailed Richard Dawkins, who's, of course, married to Lalla Ward, who played the second Romana. And now I'm just geeking out for all the fans.
For the record, I think that maybe the best first contact with Richard Dawkins wasn't to hit on his wife.
I wasn't hitting on his wife. But she's absolutely lovely. You just can't watch her without, absolutely enjoying her presence on the screen and everything else. And so, but it reminded me that one of the things I liked about it was one of my first introductions, because the Doctor, for those who aren't aware, is kind of this arrogant, know-it-all authority figure that nobody seems to question. And Romana came in as a Time Lord and actually challenged him and made him look goofy and wrong on occasion. And it was one of the first exposures I had to this idea that men and women could be equal. I mean, it was a little dose of that, because you had this Doctor who was, don't get me wrong, Doctor Who's like a superhero.
Yeah, nobody can be equal to the Doctor.
Yeah. But he's a superhero because he's a Time Lord. Well, she's a Time Lord too. They call him Time Lady, which I thought was a little sexist. But we're talking about 1979 here. So.
Lord and Lady are complimentary titles, as far as I understand.
Yes, but if you're going to talk about equality, I'm not sure that having gender-specific titles or anyway.
Right. Okay. But anyway, besides that, yes.
The big point here was that this was one of the first introductions I had to this idea of equality. And so I didn't recognize it at the time. I didn't recognize it for 20 years or so. And when I started to reflect back on it, it struck a chord. And when we look at issues like this, where, like I said before, she shouldn't have had to, prove herself. She should have just done it. And for somebody to deny that for any reason is any irrational reason like sexism is absurd. So maybe he was a chicken.
Yep, there is that too. I can't risk it. I can't put it on the line.
See, and I think it's part of religion has within it this mechanism that encourages the act of self-deception.
Oh, yeah.
All the time.
You're fooling yourself constantly.
You are in a constant state of cognitive dissonance. You are in a constant state of trying to spin everything to fit your preconceptions.
Mm-hmm. And also deliberately blocking out people who, who argue with you as just not respecting your faith.
Right. If something's not going your way, that's, the devil challenging you, or you've slipped in your, whatever.
Persecution.
You come up with any kind of rationalization. And to me, I think that mentality, the rationalization mentality, may be more prevalent in his decision than anything about gender. Because if you're afraid that you might lose to a girl, what a simple rationalization it is to claim that you're operating on behalf of your religion and actually respecting her by not doing it. So those people who are giving him kudos for his sticking by his religion, let's not do that. The author at ESPN is absolutely right. We shouldn't give anybody kudos, but for standing by any conviction that is not only demonstrably stupid but harmful.
Yep.
You know, Manson stuck by his convictions. Good for him. And on that note, I realize that I'm somewhat hypocritical because I've done something similar with the Phelpses. The difference there is that what I'm doing in that case is saying, look, when you look at the particular Christian worldviews that these individuals have, the Phelpses is literally supported by the Bible, and the liberal and moderate theists are not.
Yeah.
And I don't give them kudos for sticking by ridiculous beliefs. I just point out that between the two, if you're going to reconcile who's got
one has more integrity.
Yeah, which one's standing on firmer ground, at least from what they claim, and with regard to internal consistency, the Phelps has got to be.
Right. Ugh.
But, I mean, we don't respect that integrity.
Absolutely
or
not.
Consistency.
Nope.
I mean, there are people who accuse us of various double standards a lot of times. Like, for instance, when we were talking about that Muslim building, they said, oh, you just cut these Muslims slack for things that you would pillory Christians for. And I think we have a very consistent position, really, which is that you do not have to give a shred of respect to anyone's beliefs. You don't have to think that there's good reason for believing it. You don't have to shy away from challenging it. You do have to give respect to everybody equally having the right to express their opinions and to have equal protection under the law to have their buildings and whatnot that in which they talk about their opinions. As long as they are not doing any direct demonstrable harm in that way, like sending out death threats.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
there's we've talked a little bit before about the atheists of Florida and some of the stuff that they've been doing, like getting kicked out of the Cape Coral City Council meetings for wearing the One Nation Indivisible T-shirt. It was an absolutely ridiculous thing where the guy, the city councilman or whatever, wanted to throw them out and claimed that their attire wasn't right and that it was against the rules. And then when they asked to show the rules, he kind of backtracked and let them stay. And they were challenging Polk County Sheriff Grady Judd on whether or not he did something illegal when he removed basketball hoops from a local prison and gave them to local churches. Now the group wants more records, including documents detailing which employees were assigned to the project, how many hours they worked on it, and which agency vehicles were used to move the basketball goals. The sheriff ordered the basketball goals removed, saying going to jail isn't fun and games. The atheist group says it was unconstitutional to give the goals to the churches, and I agree.
Weird.
In addition, John Kiefer, by the way, this is from friendlyatheist.com. Thanks, Hemet. John Kiefer, a member of the group, has been arrested for causing a disturbance during a pre-meeting prayer at today's Polk County School Board meeting. The article didn't mention what Kiefer did, although we have an update on it.
Probably sneezed.
Essentially, Kiefer stood near the school board members while Walks took photographs during the prayer before the meeting began. They've done this. They've decided that they're going to have the prayer before the meeting, so it's not part of the meeting, so that it doesn't cause a conflict. He also spoke as the minister was speaking. After the invocation, he was rebuked by board member Frank O'Reilly for the disruption. Wyatt said that is when Kiefer yelled out, "Prayer has no place in government. Prayer has no place in government." So they're having a pre-meeting prayer.
Yep.
Kiefer is talking,
which is fine,
while this is going on.
It's not an official thing.
The board member rebuked him for it, and that's when he said, "Prayer has no place in government. Prayer has no place in government." Murphy
tossed him out.
Then asked Bartow police officers Jason Griffith and Julio Pagan to remove Kiefer from the auditorium. Kiefer braced himself against the officers as they dragged him out of the room. after board chairman Kay Fields told Kiefer to leave, he said he wasn't violating any laws because the meeting hadn't officially started. It has now, Fields said as she slammed down her gavel.
Oh, God.
Another city council that needs to be entirely deposed, if not brought up on criminal charges.
Uh-huh.
These are thugs. These are thugs who are so desperate to protect their own little religious identity that they will try to tap dance around every law and break laws to imprison the people who oppose them.
Right. Why do they hate America so much?
Oh, you nasty atheists are telling us we can't have prayers at our meeting. Fine, so we'll have a prayer before the meeting starts, and now we've avoided the law.
There, we snuck it in.
But if you say anything when the meeting hasn't started, we'll drag your ass out and throw you in jail. If you're in Florida and in this area, and you're not outraged in doing something, don't listen to this show anymore. The atheists in Florida need as many people as they can to get down, protest these thugs on the council, and actively work to have them removed from office, have new people elected, and I'm hoping that there are lawyers and groups like the Freedom from Religion Foundation and the ACLU who are jumping all over these cases to sue this city and set an example to every other city in the nation of what you don't get to do just because you happen to be in the majority and most people are going to go along with you. It's absolutely asinine. And on that note, I'm not going to read this last story because
Is it the?
what the hell?
Well,
Sure.
You do it.
all right.
More information.
Are we talking about the
Anger.
anger at God?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Whose story is this anyway? All right, the CNN Health, and the author is not identified at the top.
It's
Oh,
I think
good.
Dr. Gupta.
Oh,
Oh, brother.
okay. Anger at God is common even among atheists. If you're angry at your doctor, your boss, your relative, or your spouse, you can probably sit down and have a productive conversation about it. God, on the other hand, is probably not available to chat. And yet people get angry at God all the time, especially about everyday disappointments, finds a new set of studies in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology. It's not just religious folks either. People unaffiliated with organized religion, atheists and agnostics also report anger toward God either in the past or anger focused on a hypothetical image. That is, what they imagined God might be like, says lead study author Julie Exline, Case Western Reserve University psychologist.
And that's what I think kills the study.
In the past?
Hey, have you ever been mad at God in the past or any kind of what you imagine God might be? Sure, I have.
Yeah.
I used to
been
imagine
angry
that...
at
Yeah, sure.
Darth Vader, sure.
I'll tell you what, though. I'm not angry at a God that I don't think exists. I'm certainly angry at what people do in the name of a God that I don't think exists.
Yeah.
I'm certainly angry at the actions that people take on behalf of the God that they're not angry with. I'm baffled at how some of these people could believe in a God and not be angry with that thug, that monster
Yep.
that they think is real.
Twisting their sense of right and wrong.
Right, but...
It seems that more religious people are less likely to feel angry at God. That's what the study says. Well, of course
What?
they are.
Huh? Yeah.
It says religious people are less likely.
More religious people. Yes.
More religious people are less likely to feel angry at God and more likely to see His intentions as well-meaning. That's called brainwashing.
They've already volunteered to be slaves.
They have drank the Kool-Aid. Jim Jones' followers were not mad at him. They might have been as they were gasping for their last breath, but
We don't
I
know.
would expect that. I would say that if you're an atheist now and you're mad at God now, then you're deeply confused.
yeah.
Well, I mean,
It also says, wait a minute, it says, and younger people tend to be angrier at God than older people, Exline said, which I think just indicates that younger people don't get how it all works yet.
yeah. But, I mean, yeah, I can be can be angry at a fictional character for torturing the protagonist that I really like.
Sure.
And say, man, this guy's really pissing me off. This author is pissing me off.
Sure,
but,
I read the Bible.
I can be angry, but it's not that I believe that the characters exist. It's just that, my willing suspension of disbelief to read the book has led me to hate this character. Yes.
You look at, like, the Brick Testament, which portrays Noah's flood, and really goes into loving detail with people sinking beneath the water and crying out for help and drowning, and you're like, boy, that God character's really a dick.
Yeah, and seeing as the Bible and the Christian religion is just fanfic writ large, I mean, it's the same thing,
It may be the case that it's just atheists and agnostics are more willing to be honest when answering the question than believers are.
Yeah, that's possible too.
Given that analogy, do you think maybe Moses was just the first Mary Sue?
Oh, yes.
Okay, you lost me on that reference. I'm not. My geek cred is not sufficient.
Sorry, a Mary Sue is a character that you write into a fan fiction, which is yourself. Only everybody loves them, and you remember the episode where everybody loves Jonathan in Buffy?
Oh, right.
Yes.
Okay, that was
a Mary Sue.
joke at a Mary Sue.
Yeah. All right. Has somebody got something to end this on that's not a downer or a dull thud? Or is that possible after mentioning it?
I don't think so. The problem is we front load all the cool news.
That's right.
So, thud.
That's thud.
Thuds. Oh, man.
All right.
We always have Dennis's outro.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, I think there was an email that I needed to look at if I can get the dang thing to load. I was stalling for time.
Emails are good.
And as a reminder, we, of course, won't be here until the 19th. There were a bunch of emails that I'm just not going to get to. And I'm sorry.
We look at them.
Oh, there's a lot of potential guests coming up. Not only Nathan Phelps, but also Mr. Deity.
Oh, cool! Awesome.
None of these are official. We're still working about all kinds of schedule stuff. We talked a little bit about the Stone Church people, and there was a guy who had an email exchange with him. I haven't read the entire exchange yet, but there was one part that he felt was extremely inflammatory and shocking. He basically asked them, if God is all loving and all merciful, why does he torture billions for eternity? Here's the answer that he got. God is the greatest reality in all the universe. We were created to know, love, and enjoy him and find ultimate satisfaction in him. Our joy is tied in with knowing God, but knowing God means we know all of him, including his wrath, justice, and righteousness. If God saved everyone, then we'd never get to see the glory of his wrath, justice, or righteousness. If I never got to see the glory of his wrath, then he would be withholding from me some aspect of his character. If my joy in him is knowing and worshiping him for all that he is, and I don't get to see all that he is, then I can't enjoy him fully. The short answer to why all people aren't saved is that God chose some for destruction so that those who are his children would get to fully enjoy all that he is.
But all that he is, if he chooses some to suffer for all eternity, is not enjoyable. He's not enjoyable. He's a monster.
Yes.
Okay, so returning to the battered wife analogy that we love so very, very much.
Yes.
Not only do I love him even though he hits me, in fact, I love him because he hits me, because that allows me to fully enjoy his full violent temper and truly know who he is.
Yes. My best friend... Oh, no, I better rephrase this. This is obviously a hypothetical for this. My best friend is a brutal pedophile and murderer. And while that would normally make me like somebody else less, it makes me like him more because he actually shared this with me in private. You know, that on the weekends he goes out in a van and picks up children and rapes and murders them. And I feel so great that he shared that with me so that I could know him even more completely and really love him for all that he is.
Oh.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Yikes.
This is the poison that is Christianity. This is the poison that is a number of religious positions, but specifically Christianity. And I think it's partly because, and we applaud them all day long for having been dragged kicking and screaming out of the Dark Ages into something that's generally more progressive, but the damage that it does in poisoning people's perspective on morality and reality is unfucking forgivable.
Yep.
And it's why I say that they are well-meaning people who are misinformed, duped, being deceived. And if they could break free from the constant reinforcement for just a little while to recognize the absurdity of this.
All they need are better standards.
They need better friends.
Yes.
They need to stop hanging around with everybody who goes to their church and start hanging around with us.
Absolutely.
People who actually would like them to be decent human beings with an understanding of what a decent human being is, rather than just supporting them because they stand up and sit down and pray at the same time that the rest of the people in the neighborhood do. Absolutely ridiculous. Dennis.
All right.
Take us home.
Well, that was our show. I'm Dennis Ulbay, along with Matt Dillahunty,
Word.
Russell Glasser,
Yo.
and Beth Presswood.
Bye.
And the only leap of faith we indulge in is the claim that we'll be back in 3 weeks with another self-worshipping episode of The Non-Prophets. Until then, we leave you with Brian Steeksma's I Am the Satellite.
You know, the guy upstairs left us years ago. So there ain't no fake except the one you make. And there ain't no hell except the shit you take every day. So don't tell me life doesn't hurt and that you don't need the people cause you've got your church. You gotta take your head out of the sky